want to first thank everybody for being here today. I want to say a special thank you to Michael Weiner and the Players Association for supporting me through this situation and through this challenge. I want to thank the entire Milwaukee Brewers organization, starting with Mark Attanasio, who truly represents everything that's good about our game today. I want to thank my teammates, many of whom are here today, have supported me through this entire situation. I want to thank my family, my friends, a lot of other players around the league who have supported me, who have been there for me, and who have stood by me through the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my life. I also want to thank athletes in other sports who have stepped up, shown their support, and been there for me. I want to take a moment to especially thank the fans, all the fans who have supported me, as well as the fans who withheld judgment as I respected the confidentiality of this case. You know, as I've previously stated, this is without a doubt the biggest challenge I've ever faced in my life, and it's made it that much more challenging that I've had to deal with it publicly. But I truly view this challenge as an opportunity, just as I viewed every other challenge I've faced in my life as an opportunity. I've tried to respect this process, even though the confidentiality of the process was breached early on. I've tried to handle the entire situation with honor, with integrity, with class, with dignity, and with professionalism, because that's who I am, and that's how I've always lived my life. If I had done this intentionally or unintentionally, I'd be the first one to step up and say, I did it. By no means am I perfect, but if I've ever made any mistakes in my life, I've taken responsibility for my actions. I truly believe in my heart, and I would bet my life that this substance never entered my body at any point. I've always had tremendous respect for the game of baseball, and part of the reason that I've kept quiet throughout the course of this ordeal, and part of the reason why I won't be allowed to get into all of the details today, is to put the best interest of the game ahead of the best interest of myself. And that hasn't been easy. You know, there were a lot of times when I wanted to come out and tell the entire story, attack everybody, as I've been attacked, as my name's been dragged through the mud, as everything I've ever worked for in my entire life has been called into question. There were a lot of times I wanted to come out, tell the entire story, but at the end of the day, I recognized what's actually best for the game of baseball, and I put that ahead of what was actually best for myself. You know, I could have never, ever envisioned being in this position today, discussing this subject with you guys. But I truly believe that everything in life happens for a reason. I learned a long time ago to stop questioning life. I believe that everything that's thrown at us, we're able to handle, and that there's a reason for it. I've yet to figure out exactly what the reason for this is, but I don't question that. I have always stood up for what is right. Today's about everybody who's ever been wrongly accused, and everybody who's ever had to stand up for what is actually right. Today is not just about me. It's not just about one player. It's about all players. It's about all current players, all future players, and everybody who plays the game of baseball. In spite of the fact that there have been many inaccurate, erroneous, and completely fabricated stories regarding this issue, I've maintained the integrity of the confidentiality of the process. There's never been a personal medical issue. I've never had an STD. Many of the stories that were erroneously reported by the initial network continue to live on, and it's sad and disappointing that this has become a PR battle and people continue to leak information that's inaccurate. I will continue to take the high road because that's who I am, and that's the way that I've lived my life. We won because the truth is on my side. The truth is always relevant, and at the end of the day, the truth prevailed. I'm a victim of a process that completely broke down and failed in the way that it was applied to me in this case. As players, we're held to a standard of 100% perfection regarding the program, and everybody else associated with that program should be held to the same standard. We're a part of a process where you're 100% guilty until proven innocent. It's opposite of the American judicial system. This is not an innocent until proven guilty situation. So if we're held to that standard, it's only fair that everybody else is held to that exact same standard. With what's at stake, this is my livelihood, this is my integrity, this is my character, This is everything I've ever worked for in my life being called into question. We need to make sure that we get it right. If you're going to be in a position where you're 100% guilty until proven innocent, you can't mess up. And today's about making sure that this never happens to anybody else who plays this game. The system, in the way that it was applied to me in this case, was fatally flawed. The initial test result in question was on October 1st. It was a playoff game. I was made aware of the positive test result on October 19th, at which point I had a conversation with the Players Association. I expressed to them that I have not done anything that could have possibly led to this test result. I told them that I promise you on everything that's ever meant anything to me in my life, the morals, the values, the virtues by which I've lived for my 28 years on this planet, I did not do this. I told them that I would be an open book. I opened up my life to them. I told them I'd be more than happy and willing to take any and every test to prove that I did not do this. You know, the entire process has really been frustrating for me. It's been an extremely difficult, challenging time in my life. But at the end of the day, I know the truth. My friends, family, teammates, the Milwaukee Brewers organization, and everybody who knows me knows the truth. At the point that I told the Players Association about the positive test, they told me that the test result was 3 times higher than any number in the history of drug testing. We've had this program since, I believe, 2003 or 2004. I don't know how many tens of thousands of tests there have been, but the fact that there's a single number that's 3 times higher than any number in the history of drug testing made me question the validity of the result. At that point, I was able to prove to them through contemporaneously documented recordings that I literally didn't gain a single pound. When we're in Milwaukee, we weigh in at least once or twice a week. I was able to prove that I literally didn't gain a single pound. Our times are recorded every time we run. Down the line, you know, first to third, first to home, I literally didn't get 1/10 of a second faster. My workouts have been virtually the exact same for 6 years. I didn't get 1% stronger. I didn't work out any more often. I didn't have any additional power or any additional arm strength. All of those things are documented contemporaneously, and if anything had changed, I wouldn't be able to go back and pretend like it didn't change. I initially took a humanistic approach and explained to them, I'm 27 years old, I'm just entering my prime, I have a contract guaranteed for 9 more years, I've been tested 25 times over the course of my career, at least 3 times this season prior to this test, and an additional time when I signed my contract, including an extensive physical, blood test, everything you could imagine. I've never had any issue. There's no evidence to suggest otherwise. And they said, that's great, we believe you. In fact, the other side believes you. None of this makes any sense to anybody. At that point, they explained to me the way that the process works and that the burden of proof falls on us to be able to prove objectively what caused the positive test result or what could have went wrong during the process that could have possibly led to the positive test result. So at that point, we start looking into the process. It states in the Joint Drug Prevention and Treatment Program that all samples shall be taken immediately to FedEx on the day they're collected absent unusual circumstances. The reason this is important is because after we provide our samples, typically the only 2 people in the world who know whose sample it is are us, the donor, and the collector who receives our urine samples. In my case, there was an additional 3rd person, the son of the collector, who just happened to be my chaperone on the day that I was tested. The day of the test, we had a 1 o'clock game. I provided my sample at about 4:30. There were 2 other players who provided their samples that day within 10 minutes of mine. The collector left the field at about 5 o'clock. There were at least 5 FedEx locations within 5 miles of the stadium that were open until 9 p.m., and an additional FedEx location that was open for 24 hours. There were upwards of 18 or 19 FedEx locations that were open between the ballpark and his house that he could have dropped the samples off at. When FedEx receives the samples, it then creates a chain of custody. At the FedEx location where he eventually brought my sample to, it would have been stored in a temperature-controlled environment, and FedEx is used to handling clinical packaging. But most importantly, you then would become a number and no longer a name. So when we provide our samples, there's a number, there's no longer a name associated with the sample. That way there can't be any bias, whether it's with FedEx, while it's traveling at the lab in Montreal or in any way, so that there can't be any bias based on somebody's race, religion, ethnicity, what team they play for, whatever the case may be. As players, the confidentiality of this process is extremely important. It's always been extremely important. It's the only way for the process to succeed is for the confidentiality and the chain of custody to work. Why he didn't bring it in, I don't know. On the day that he did finally bring it in, FedEx opened at 7:30. Why didn't he bring it in until 1:30? I can't answer that question. Why was there zero documentation? What could have possibly happened to it during that 44-hour period? There were a lot of things that we learned about the collector, about the collection process, about the way that the entire thing worked that made us very concerned and very suspicious about what could have actually happened. I want everybody to ask themselves this question. If you guys went to go get a physical, something you've done 20, 25 other times in your life, 3 weeks later they came back and told you that you were terminally ill with a disease, and it made no sense to you, right? You said, I feel perfectly fine, nothing's any different than it's ever been, this doesn't make any sense. And you look back at the process and you find out that your doctor decided to take your urine sample home for a 44, 48-hour period. There's no documentation as to what happened. You don't know if he left it in the trunk of his car. You don't know where it could have been or what could have potentially happened to it during that period of time. I can assure you that you would never go back to that doctor and you would demand a retest. When our samples get to the lab in Montreal, they literally handle them like it's a nuclear weapon. Everything is documented. Everything is recorded. Anybody who enters the room where the samples are stored, their names are recorded, they sign for it, they write the time that they're there, the model of the refrigerator that it's stored in is recorded, the temperature it's stored at is recorded. Every time they move it, it's all documented, contemporaneously documented. And that's important, again, with what's at stake being our livelihoods, our integrity, everything we've ever worked for in our lives. It's extremely important that there isn't room for human error or systematic error. We spoke to biochemists and scientists, and we asked them, how difficult would it be to tamper with somebody's sample? And their response was that if they were motivated, it would be extremely easy. Again, that's why it's so important to get out of the hands of the only person in the world who knows whose sample it is. As soon as it gets to FedEx, they don't know whose sample it is. As soon as it gets to the lab, they don't know whose sample it is. That's why it's extremely important. Ultimately, as I sit here today, the system worked because I am innocent, and I was able to prove my innocence. After today, I look forward to returning my focus to the game of baseball, being able to get back with my teammates, allowing my life to return to some sense of normalcy, and focusing on helping our team get back to the postseason.